My intention is just to make sense about race in America and to critique the way we talk about race and put forward alternative frameworks that are more useful. But if part of that entails people feeling less guilt, shame, or pride for the amount of melanin in their skin, then so much the better.
I'd say one of the sort of summarizing for maybe people who haven't read many of your pieces, one of the themes that you talk about a lot is that if you just look at kind of disparities between different racial groups and conclude that it's only due to discrimination, you're ignoring a whole load of other factors that could be responsible for that. Would that be a good summary? And also, and in particular, in that the role of culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of the confusion around systemic racism stems from the assumption that in the absence of some systemic bias, different groups would achieve statistically equal outcomes. We have no reason to believe that this is true if you think about it for just a few minutes. For example, the average white American household of Russian descent earns $1 for every 79 cents earned by the average white American household of French descent. In America, both of these groups would just be called white people. But if you categorize them by the country in Europe they came from, you get a 21 cent on the dollar pay gap. Does that imply that the US is systemically racist against white American French people? Well, no. It's just that these disparities are the norm. It's normal to have disparities between groups with entirely different histories, entirely different patterns of migration, entirely different demographics, entirely different average ages. And this is equally true if you break down quote-unquote black people into subgroups and sub-ethnicities. You'll find that Nigerian households make not only more than the average American household, but much more than the average, say, Haitian American household. Yet both of these people are black. If we can't even attain parity within races, what is the thinking that assumes we should be achieving parity between races when races have entirely different histories and patterns of migration and cultures and values at the median? This is a completely unsupported assumption, and yet it is rarely challenged, because if you do challenge it, then you have to be willing to cite uncomfortable facts about different cultures having different values that lead them at the median to achieve different outcomes, whether it's in education, athletics, or business.
The example that you just gave was Haitian and Nigerian, I think. And obviously the big issue under all of this is the legacy of slavery, which I guess the Haitian would have and the Nigerian wouldn't. So
not necessarily. I mean, there's been slavery in modern day Nigeria. There's been slavery virtually everywhere there's been civilization. Obviously, we know more about the transatlantic slave trade partially because the West participated in it. Most people don't know that 14 million Africans were enslaved by Arabs. Most people know very little about the history of slavery in China. Most people know very little about the history of white slaves on the Barbary Coast in North Africa. So one thing I would say is, yes, we have a recent legacy of slavery in the West Indies, in America, in Brazil, etc. And we happen to know more about it because we're kind of narcissistic about our own history, and we talk about slavery as if it's something only America and Britain and Portugal participated in. But slavery is as old as civilization. It's at least 10,000 years old. It's been practiced on every continent that's been inhabited, in virtually every civilization. So in some sense, the legacy of slavery is something everyone in the world is trailing, not just Black Americans.